Hello everyone, welcome to Book Passage. We are so excited to have author Skye here. She's here today to talk about her book, A Ceremony Called Life, When Your Morning Coffee is as Sacred as Holy Water. In A Ceremony Called Life, Skye encourages us to ask ourselves, what happens when we let go of the past, the misunderstandings of our perspective, and begin to switch the roles, allowing our mind to work for our heart? A wonderful philosophy this book imparts upon its readers is to acknowledge the fluctuations of life as natural and to simultaneously let it go. Skye is a metaphysical guide and healing facilitator who offers retreats and workshops internationally. She writes poetry, has also written articles, and appeared in podcasts and radio interviews. Please join me in a warm welcome for Skye.
Hi everybody. I just want to give you one more thank you for being here on such a beautiful day and sharing this moment together. So, as Joy just mentioned, we joined together today for a little bit of a sharing from my book called A Ceremony Called Life, When Your Morning Coffee is as Sacred as Holy Water. And just to share with you a bit about how this book came into existence in the first place, I was spending the summer in Copenhagen with my partner, Carl, and these words, A Ceremony Called Life, just overcame me. Traditionally, I've just written poetry. This is the first book I've written. But these words, these poetic words, just washed over me, and they just felt so strong, and I felt like there was so much packed into this message of living life as a ceremony, as essentially the sacred practice. And the book just poured from the title. And the journey of the book was a ceremony in and of itself. I didn't know anybody in the literary world, and I had no idea what to do after writing it, or even how to write it. And once the book was written, just magic started to unfold. And my perspective was that this magic that unfolded from it of miraculously finding an agent and a publisher and everything just having its own life really without too much effort or stress from my side, it felt like it had so much to do with allowing myself to drop more into that space of just being receptive to life, rather than seeking and pushing and almost feeling like against life in some ways. And so, yes, the culmination of that journey and that experience is so much reflected in this book. And so I'd like to begin by just sharing some of it with you. And I think I'm going to read from the first chapter. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but it just feels like a gentle opening of the content, and I'd like to share that with you. So it'll be a bit of reading because it's not 2 pages, but. So the first chapter is called What is Spirituality? And it begins with a poem from Kabir. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. My shoulder is against yours. You will not find me in stupas, not in Indian shrine rooms, nor in synagogues, nor in cathedrals, not in masses, nor kirtans, not in legs winding around your own neck, nor in eating nothing but vegetables. When you really look for me, you will see me instantly. You will find me in the tiniest house of time. Kabir says, student, tell me, what is God? He is the breath inside the breath. And this poem is just touching me so deeply because in my own spiritual journey and experiences, I've seen myself and my friends searching and looking and regulating and controlling and these subtle things that we can do as ways to know ourselves more deeply and discover what is perhaps true for us. But the more I've relaxed into seeing the miracle in every little thing, like this chair here, the chairs that we're sitting in right now, so mundane, totally something that we just take for granted. We're just sitting on a chair. It's part of everyday existence. And they're not particularly spectacular chairs. They're just very everyday basic chairs. But even this chair is a miracle. It's something that someone created. It's something that was originally just a thought or an idea. And it is the playing of form in this life. And when we slow down enough to that turtle's pace of receiving and looking, I find that we can start to see the miracle that is in everything, that is in every moment. And that this is really taking us home within ourselves. So that's not from the book, I didn't memorize that. But that's what this poem inspires in me and what really inspires this chapter. So what is spirituality? The chapter begins. I have to say this now, for if I don't, I will burst. Spirituality includes your humanness. It includes your wariness and stumbles as much as your reverence and joy. And it includes Seinfeld as much as satsang. It is perhaps confounding for us all that somewhere along the line, spirituality seemed to begin to exclude the ruffled feathers of our humanity. Maybe it's all the conditioning of control and the patriarchal structures, or maybe it's the Eastern focus on enlightenment and non-duality that did it. But whatever is responsible for the misunderstanding that spirituality only breeds on shiny white marble floors, that spirituality is a compartmentalized area of our lives rather than all of life itself, I am sure did not intend for such an epic mix-up. Spirituality, or anything that is meant to explore the nature of being, could never reject or exclude anything that exists, period. In other words, spiritual practice includes and welcomes not just your ohms, but also your my God, I am about to flip out. For, after all, although the former may be peace, the latter is just the perception of an absence of peace, and therefore an invitation into the opening and expansion process that life is all about. Our places of discovery, illumination, and breakthrough are not limited to our temples and our mosques, but extend into traffic jams, dirty dishes, and even our trips to the mechanic. What's happened, though, is we have moved so far away from appreciating the sacred, pervasive nature of our vulnerability, which is truly one of our most essential gifts. And as a result of this rejection, have struggled, compartmentalized our lives away, and become deeply dissatisfied. For that, it is time to reclaim what we know in our bones to be true. It is time to reclaim the spark in our souls and the expansive holiness of our lives. It is often our ignorance and our ideas around spirituality that keep us from knowing our wholeness. For example, many of us believe ourselves to be unspiritual or not into that stuff, which in and of itself is a debilitating idea. On the other hand, many of us on a spiritual path quietly hope that spirituality is an end to vulnerability and the ups and downs of life. We believe we're out of the grace of God, or not doing good enough, or regressing, or need to grow faster, or whatever our particular strand of rejection is, just because we're human. To that I say it is time for an inner revolution, one that burns away that old paradigm, the idea that who we are as we are is not enough, and that life gives us problems, and radically welcomes a new paradigm that honors the full spectrum of our human vulnerability and the teachings of the Guru of life. This, I am sure, is the only way to remember the wholeness we once knew so well. If that wholeness is what spirituality points towards, then I say spiritual practice is the practice of becoming more aware via the human experience of the divinity and unity consciousness that is everyone and everything. I also say that wherever there is transcendence, there must also be inclusion. In other words, spirituality is working with and through the human experience for the expansion of our awareness. Furthermore, I'd say it's the practice of anchoring that awareness in the body, which can also be described as merging and integrating the God self spiritual with the human self material. I refer to that merged wholeness as the self with a capital S. It's a case of and. We are both human and God. We're feeling both frustrated or angry or sad and at peace. We are both the spiritual, eternal, and the material, ephemeral. We created the material through the spiritual, which means the material must be inherently spiritual. And now we have the unique and wildly magical opportunity of experiencing ourselves, which is what it's all about. By the power of reflection, life is an experience of ourselves, and ourselves, lowercase s, as the case may be. The two simple things this practice of awareness and integration necessitates are presence and accountability. I actually want to pause there and just talk a little bit about that together. Because I think sometimes it's just helpful to just round it out even more with examples from our own lives. And so, just to expound a bit, when we say all of life is a spiritual practice and that there is divinity and opportunity and gives it everything, to me that extends from the most mundane moments like trips to the mechanic when we're sitting there getting our oil changed and maybe feeling that compulsion to check our phones and think about the things we have to do, that there's actually that invitation to just breathe and look at this kind of crazy thing, that the car's oil is getting changed, that cars exist, that we ride in these things that take us from place to place. When we just take a step back from what our mind is so used to and therefore doesn't necessarily have an openness to, and open ourselves to it, we can be touched again by that magic and mystery that's right in front of our face all the time. And so that's one really basic example, right? Something super mundane. But what about the challenging moments, right? Because they're happening. It's part of being human. I can tell you that in my own life, I'm in a relationship with my wonderful guy, but we go through challenges. It's a relationship. And every time, if I were to get stuck in some of those moments of these challenges, which happens sometimes, of feeling perhaps like a victim or like this keeps happening and it's so frustrating and it's so painful and I just wanted to end, that situation should just fully end. I'm cutting myself off from the opportunity that exists there. And sometimes that's okay. We need to be there for a moment because we're human, right? But if I then take a deep breath and say, okay, what are we learning here? What's happening here? What's being reflected in this moment? Maybe it's my own resistance to something inside of myself. Maybe it's an old wound or memory from my childhood that's being touched and there's still just a sensitivity there. Or maybe I have boundaries that are being crossed that really need to be expressed in a loving way, that they don't need to be reacted to, but just expressed. I need to express them in a loving way. Whatever might be going on in these challenging moments, the point is that when we show up with presence, which means we're here as best we can be without the influences and the mind trip about the past, right? Or our fears about the future, but we're just here simply with what is right now. So when we show up with that presence and accountability, which is that willingness to be responsible for the way that we see things, and our responsibility to ourselves to know that sometimes we don't see things that clearly, and that when we don't, it's actually an opportunity That if we can be accountable about it and be like, okay, I'm flared up right now and I want to react and I'm really upset. And this is just a really common way, I think, that we can kind of leave ourselves in our presence sometimes, and it definitely comes up for me sometimes, which is why I want to mention it. But if in those moments we can have that awareness of ourselves to see that something's coming up right now and it's actually an opportunity, and I can be responsible for the way that I see things. And I can look a bit deeper, or have a conversation with my partner, whoever it is, to essentially drop into a deeper space of empowerment around what I want in my life, what needs the salve of my love, if it's a bit of old wounding. Being more empowered to create as I really need to by having a conversation that's filled with good communication rather than that reactivity that we can get into sometimes. Things like that. Between the presence and the accountability, I find that we can continue to make such good magic in our lives, and that life is this wild opportunity and this huge gift, from my perspective, to create as we want to create. And then human as we are, we have patterns and conditioning, and so we find ourselves sometimes creating as we don't want to create. But that every time we see that, we have the opportunity to actually drop into deeper wholeness and to readjust and reorient ourselves so that we're actually moving forward as we really intend to. And from that perspective, every time we're falling out of it, it's not a problem. It's okay. It's a sacred aspect of our humanity because it's part of how we all function to an extent. And it's an opportunity to reconsider and to allow ourselves to be an expression of that which we really mean to be expressing and creating, of the truth in our hearts, right? Because all of us want to be creating in a way that is fulfilling in our lives, is satisfying, is enriching. And so looking over and over again at challenging moments to see how we can actually drop into a deeper alignment in those moments. Of course, fully accepting whatever we're feeling, no rejection, no bypassing, right? But holding that consideration of, what do I really mean to be creating in this moment? And how can I express that more clearly through my behavior, how I handle things, is just so powerful. So I feel like I've shared a lot already, and I know there's a lot packed in the words. So before I continue with the book, I just want to open up the floor. If anyone has anything they want to share, maybe it's an experience from your own life or a question, anything at all, please feel welcome. And there's no pressure also. If you want to just sit back and receive, you're welcome to do that too. Cool. We're in receptive mode today. I like it. So I'm going to continue with the chapter then where we left off. So the last sentence that I had read was, the two simple things this practice of awareness and integration necessitates are presence and accountability. Actually, before I continue reading, now there's something else that I'm inspired to share about that, which is I see a lot of our challenges come up around the way we separate our human self and our spiritual self. And that so much of this metaphor, ceremony called life, is about the opportunity that we have to integrate the two and realize that the two were only really ever whole to begin with. And so, as I also just described through examples, rather than rejecting our experiences that we go through that are challenging, or tensing up when something's happened, or the little ways that we start to go into resistance and sort of reject life, and essentially reject ourselves too, just to drop into relaxation around whatever's happening, and allow that divinity that can only ever, always be there within us, no matter how strongly we feel it or how subtly we feel it. It is always there because we are here and we exist and we are functioning and we are breathing and we are speaking. And that's all the proof that we need. I mean, how has that happened? It's miraculous, right? So that even in these moments where we start to reject the human experience at all, or call it not sacred or not worthwhile, or it's not nice enough, or it's not spiritual enough, or whatever it is that's thematic in our lives, that we just hold it, that we widen ourselves out in our heart to hold it in sacredness, even if it's challenging, or even if it's blissful and exciting, because it can be when we widen out to hold something that we thought we couldn't, or we didn't want to, because nobody ever did it for us, whatever it is. That this is the integration of our humanity and our spirituality. Just letting them get closer and closer together within ourselves. Discovering what that feels like inside, and that we can't even be in that state at all. What I love about this is this is not some far off goal of enlightenment or anything like that. This is simply our nature, that you could say because of society and the way we've grown up and what everybody's taught us, we've separated those two bits of ourselves so much. And just to have that one intention, and if it's the only thing you leave here with today from the sharing, that one intention of just holding our humanity sacred and just letting that depth of your being, that presence within yourselves, to hold yourself in all of these moments, then slowly it's happening on its own. It's not an effort. So let's see if I'm really going to start this time. Okay. This understanding of spirituality implies that all of life is ceremony, simply because it is a procession of sacred moments. And all of those moments inherently contain within them the invitation for you to either become more aware or rest in your beingness as awareness itself, as the one who witnesses or observes all. Every single thing, from washing the dishes to mowing the lawn, is a spiritual activity simply because it involves you, a being of inexplicable cosmic presence, and simply because it is happening. It is a moment available for your totality. It is a moment for you to experience the fullness of life through the incredible spectrum of duality. It is a moment for you to appreciate, really appreciate, that life is not about making you happy or meeting your expectations. It is a moment for you to appreciate that all moments, the good moments, the bad moments, every kind of moment, are part of the ceremony. It is a moment for the awareness that you are to juice the experience of this divine unfolding via your presence, accountability, and vulnerability for all that it is worth. There are a bunch more pages in this chapter, but I feel like I want to stop there with that one for today. Because I feel like the message and the sharing there is just already permeating. I feel it really strong, and we get it. I think we get it. So chapter 1 continues about that and goes into different ways in which perhaps why we haven't, and how we can reorient into that perspective. Another paragraph, though, just to jump ahead, is this profound opportunity we have to live from the inside out, to move into holy union by simply working with life as it happens, is profoundly magical, though not unique. It's important to recognize we've all got the same keys to the kingdom inside of us, and no matter who we are, what religion or tradition we do or don't follow, or how many times we have or haven't gone to Burning Man or Mass, each one of us is just as connected and godly as the next. Every single one of us is a child of the universe. We're all part of the cosmic dance. We've all got this potency, this magic inside. It's what lights up our bodies and pours through us as inspiration. It's the love we feel. It's the dance we dance when we know we are free. The song we sing when we really let go. It's the glimmer of hope, the ray of light we just know is there in our hardest moments. The ceremony of life begins the moment we become aware that we are in a ceremony at all. This is the drawing back of the curtains where all begins to be revealed. Through our presence, which is simply the here now, silent, eternal essence of our being that's unrelated to any past or future, and accountability, moment by moment, all unravels into the deeper, truer layers, and both the treasures within us and the treasures of existence come to reflect before us like the wild prisms they are. And so part of this vision or this perspective is that there's nothing we need to do. We don't need to push ourselves. Everything is unfolding, every moment of our lives, exactly as it needs to, with all of the opportunities in it to open us, to see more clearly, to simply be present and feel whatever is happening. And if we feel to practice something, then that's perfect as well, by which I mean practice a religion or any sort of devotion. That's beautiful. But no matter what, day by day, life is giving us what we need. The ceremony, the practice is all there in every single moment when we become willing to see that and consider that again. So thank you for taking in chapter 1. And I'm going to bring our attention to a different topic as soon as I can find it. Table of contents, that's what that's for. Before I do, anyone, anything you want to share, or questions or comments, or?
What was the deep transformation that got you on this journey? Was there one incident that you want to share? Or?
Thank you for asking, because I often don't bring it up on my own. It's just not how things flow through me, I guess, of what I'm sharing. And it's really important to share, so thank you for asking. My journey, of course, like anyone else, began when I was born. And I was born into a wonderful family also, but very dysfunctional, very reactive, and some abuse there too. And what essentially happened, to describe it in a nutshell, was that when I was in my mid-20s, I was working in the music industry. And when I had been young, I always felt very free and understood that beliefs shape our lives. And there, my point being, there was something in touch with like the empowerment of how we create our own lives, yeah? And I felt like I was good with this, and I had worked through what I'd gone through as a child, and I didn't necessarily need to give it any more attention. I was good in my mid-20s. And so what happened was I was working in the music industry. I was about 25 when that big moment came of transformation, of shift. And I had this great job managing bands and musicians at a really prestigious firm. Like, my fantasies had come true, and I loved it. But something had been neglected. I was working all day, every day. I had, without even realizing it, become really shaped by the expectations of society and men and people around me of being smart and, very much in my head and tough. And we all know what this is like, especially women, having gone through this in our society and having seen those, in a way, how much more we can get accomplished and how accepted we are in like everyday society when we sort of take on those qualities. Although a lot of it's shifting now. And all I wanted was a partner. I just wanted to find my guy and be loved and enjoy. And experience after experience, I kept having these really challenging connections with men. And every time something went wrong, or even if something didn't go wrong, I would perceive something as having gone wrong. If I got a weird text message, or I didn't get called back right away, or whatever it was, and I would be thrown into so much pain and darkness. I mean, I would write the darkest poetry and not want to get out of bed because I didn't get texted back. I mean, completely, of course, nonsensical. But when we have that sort of wounding in us, it doesn't take much, you know? So that wounding and that pain started to get so strong inside of me at the same time that I was looking at my life day after day, sitting there in the office every day, freaking out because I didn't get a text message, and feeling like doom inside, just such pain. And one day I snapped. I had a really hard experience with someone that I was dating, and he would probably have no idea that there was such a hard experience, but I couldn't get out of bed and just so depressed and in so much pain. And I knew that I had to make a change. I knew that I had to figure out who I was without all of that pain, and who I was also if I wasn't who I thought I was, which was this cool young girl with a great job who, you know, had some power in that industry. I had become pretty identified with this ego version of myself. And so the pain of the, well, from my perspective, relationship and that ego needing to break from all of this identification became unbearable, and I snapped. And one day I just quit my job in a total reactive space. And I drove up the coast from LA to, I went up to Seattle. And I just knew I was letting it all go. I was letting this sort of death come over me, where I was letting go of everyone I knew, everything I had been through, and just on a new path of just looking at myself honestly so that I could live as I really meant to live, which wasn't as how I had been living. So that was the catalyst. It was very deeply emotional and painful, and it took me to a commune in Costa Rica where I thought I was going for like this 6-week workshop immersion, and ended up staying for 4 months doing workshops and Zen awareness retreats and ceremonial work with indigenous people, and a whole array, just that one thing after the other, which essentially forced me to just totally confront all of those ideas about who I thought I was and let them shatter. And that was really where that shift happened, was in leaving and choosing to have that conviction. I mean, actually it wasn't a choice, that conviction was there no matter what, but choosing to go through with it, that willingness. And then going off to Costa Rica and letting myself just start from scratch, yeah. And this is, interestingly, it's actually where I got introduced to ceremonial work, which is a lot of the inspiration for a ceremony called life. Because in the ceremonial work that I was present in, whether it was indigenous ceremony with plant medicine, which is not a big part of my path, but is something that I've been with, that's been very powerful as well. Or other ceremonies just with the land, or with in retreats. In those heightened states, you see how everything's changing so fast. How you can be in a moment like a baby of turmoil and crying and so purging, just, who knows, lifetimes of feeling. And then it passes, and then everything is clear, and the colors are sharper, and then, you know, and then something else comes, inspiration for something else, and it touches another part, and just that kaleidoscopic nature of life can be challenging, but is also revealing to us just this spectacular nature of existence and of what we can feel and experience in this life and create. So, yeah, that was, you're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments before I read from the next chapter? Yes.
I just want to say you must be a very old soul, because it takes, years and years to get to that point. In my experience and people in my generation, it's just layers and layers and layers of life have to be lived, not your authentic self until you realize that. I mean, and you did it at 25. That's kind of extraordinary.
It's so interesting, we all have gifts, And sometimes, I think especially when we're interested in spirituality at all, we can want our gifts to be a certain way. But every single one of us has incredible gifts. And actually, not to get off topic, because I'll start talking about this other book that I really like. It's called The Gene Keys. But we all have these aspects of you could say like manifested divinity within us. For some of us it's patience. For some of us we just are so connected with that, you could say, virtue or that divine aspect of simply being here and letting things unfold in their own time. And we overlook them. But we all have one of these beautiful glimmers inside of us. Just need to look. Thank you. Okay. So what I'd like to share with you next is called From Wanting to Desire. The reason, this is actually pretty significant for me, this chapter in particular, because when I started writing the book, this was one of the first things that was written. Actually, it was before I even wrote the book. This was the first thing that came in the family, you could say, of what was written in the book. And I said to Spirit, I'm like, look, I'm going to go through with this. I'm going to write this book, but I need I need a sign from you. Like, give me something to let me know that this is right for me. And I requested one in particular. I said, I would like the first piece that is published of something that I've written to appear on Ram Dass's blog. He's the spiritual teacher that I love Ram Dass. He's beautiful. And he doesn't really have a blog that's constantly filled with other people's stuff. I didn't realize it at the time, but he and his team, they're mostly adding to their blog people that they already know and friends, and very sporadically. So this miracle happened, and I was writing the book, and this piece, like I mentioned, had already been written, and I had submitted it to Ram Dass's people. And then it was September, in between, I think there was an eclipse and a new moon, and it was the Jewish New Year, and it was just one of these sort of poignant moments, you could say, energetically, astrologically, which is something I like to pay attention to and consider. And I heard back from Ram Dass's camp that they were going to publish this piece. And so this piece is sort of like, almost like a crystal or a charm or something for me, because it ended up being very symbolic to just continue and to just trust. And actually with saying that, I just also want to remind all of us, myself included, that we can ask for this communication from Spirit. And when we're willing to see how we get the answers or the responses, it's a better word, even in small ways, we start to realize that divine communication that we're always in. Right, Henry? That's the dog. He's like, yeah. So from wanting to desire. So each chapter begins with a quote. As is his desire, so is his will. As is his will, so is his deed. And whatever deed he does, that he will reap. And that's from a translation of the Upanishads. It is often said that desire is the root of suffering, and many of us believe it. But the root of suffering could never be desire itself. Instead, it is desiring something to be any other way than the way it is, which, by virtue of its context and texture, is a want. Why? Because the mind came up with it. By the way, I'm a big fan of the mind, so I don't say that in a derogatory way. But because the mind came up with it. The mind, in its resistance to life as it is, wants things to be different. Whereas desire exists in the heart and soul as the spirit of inspiration itself. It has been said, after all, that it was Buddha's desire to relieve people of suffering that led him to uncover and share the great wisdom he knew. Wanting you can do without, but desire is an invaluable part of the fabric of your being. Consider it like this. Wanting is tense. Desire is relaxed. Passionate, but relaxed. The distinction between the two is important to be aware of, for to try to extinguish or deny the fire of desire, the fire and desire of your heart, is to mute and disempower the creative force within. Let's zoom in to be touched by a deeper understanding. The first insight to tune into is receiving cannot happen in the vessel of wanting. Everything has a vibration. When you embody the energy of wanting, the vehicle of your being takes a particular shape, the shape of wanting. And in the shape of wanting, nothing can be truly received. Love cannot fit into this shape. Prosperity cannot fit into this shape. Peace cannot fit into this shape. To truly receive, you must be formless. You must be open to the energy you are calling in, and then be able to receive and hold it, to be one with it. Only when you are one with something are you truly receiving it. Only then are you truly intimate with it. And only then can you truly know it, truly feel it. Only then can you dance with this energy, be moved by this energy. And only then can the chemistry of you plus this energy be revealed. If you are wanting another person, there is no space for the other to meet you. There is only a tense vehicle of anxiety through which the stream of truth and fulfillment cannot flow. If you're wanting to feel differently than you're feeling, there is no acceptance. And when there is no acceptance, there is only resistance, and therefore no possibility of transformation. There is no intimacy with the moment, no journey to unwrap the gifts. And who can truly want? If there is nobody there, no person inside the person, who is wanting? Your pure essence can only accept, and the essence of your soul can only be inspired. The fountain of this inspiration overflows into the purity of desire. Pure desire is divine fuel that attracts that which you are desiring. It's the yes in response to your anticipation of what's to come, what's right for you. Its song floats towards its resonance like gorgeous dancing smoke, luring its focus into manifestation. When your mind is too involved and attached, it is in wanting, which is very different. When the energy is the pure passion of your soul, detached and in surrender to what will be, guided by God, it is desire. Desire lights. Desire is a microphone to God. It is the primary feeling that triggers manifestation, and its presence is a mandatory ingredient in alchemy. Do you want your life to conform to the fictions of your mind? Or does moving into divine openness feel more fulfilling, more true? Here is a meditation for you. Relax as you watch the burnt branches of wanting snap in their futility. Breathe deeply as the old season cycles out. Enjoy the precious feeling of opening as space clears for the warm, golden rush of desire to carry your visions to realization. Every moment is an invitation home. So I just want to have a moment just so that we can all feel that also me. So we get so used to being in this seeking, accomplishing, doing. We can just say action. We get so used to being in action. And there's a misunderstanding that when we relax or when we're really spiritual or something, that we're not doing anything. Or sometimes actually we can even get stuck there, that we're just like trying to rest so much that it's like there's almost a stuckness about it. But when we relax and just let life happen a bit more on its own and catch the ways in which we push or seek or want or believe that things should be a certain way, or all these little ways that we micromanage the way we think life should be, and just take a deep breath and just start to receive life a bit the way it is, and be willing to be dazzled by what might happen, what might come that doesn't match your expectations. This is a more gentle space to be in. And this is also a space, again, where we can continue to create as we really mean to create. And I even just feel just a bit of sensitivity about it, because it just feels very raw. And feeling my own rawness, I can share with you that over the past years, I've spent a lot of time outside of the Western world. And for that, less connected, you could say, to the Western mind and the collective that's so strong here. In the past year and a half now, or about, I've been here consistently, which is the longest span that I've been here since I made that big change of leaving the music industry. And I can tell you, and I don't need to tell you, we all know, it's strong. It's strong, this collective mind. And I see even within myself it creep up, and this belief that I need to push, or even sometimes it's already crept up, and I notice that it's crept up, that I'm pushing and I'm believing that things need to be a certain way in order for them to mean something that I want them to mean. For example, maybe it could be if something hasn't been published in a certain publication that I want it to be in, right? That I notice that I'm pushing for it to happen, then if it doesn't happen, that I'm questioning why that is, or again, it's just this we can say this Western mind. And so especially for those of us, and I'm gonna say warriors, warriors that are here in this land of the United States of America in this day and age, that have this awareness of our spirituality and this desire to be true, we can just say true to ourselves. We're in a strong land to be doing that. And so we really deserve to give ourselves even an extra dose of consideration and slowness to see the ways in which we're pushing, or we're allowing ourselves to feel pushed because of the energy of the collective. Yeah? Not only the energy of the collective, but for example. So, and just to sort of close that, I can share with you from my own experience, I'm sure you all have experiences of your own that match this, that often there are moments in our lives when something is just right for us, and we feel in our body. We feel it in our body. Just as we feel in our body when something's not right for us, we can locate that perhaps a lot more easily. And when something, this is what I really, really, really want to say, is that when something is right for us like that, that has nothing to do with us, in the sense that it's so much bigger than us or our isolated existence, you could say. That's the divine pouring through us as something that is perhaps meant to happen in our lives, something that is just so aligned, something that is divinely supported in unfolding. And that's why it feels so right. There's that feeling of desire, which perhaps you can locate the difference between that wanting, which is so tense, and that desire of like, oh yeah, that feels good. Yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, that feels right. Yeah. Do you guys know what I mean a little bit? Or a lot of it? Or somewhat? Yeah. Well, what I want to say is that this desire, we don't need to push. We feel that because it's already happening. It's like our system going, oh yeah, oh right, that's happening. That feels good. That's gonna, okay. And we're fully supported in its unfolding in the sweetest way. It doesn't always look the way we want it to look, but if we stay open to just the way it's unfolding and that journey, we often find ourselves in miraculous moments of our lives and miraculous experiences. Of course, not to differentiate from the everyday miraculous, but just to say another glimmer of the miraculous, right? Yeah. So we have about 5 more minutes, and yeah, if there's anything you'd like to share, I would love to hear from you. And again, no pressure if you don't feel like talking. I rarely speak when I'm in the audience. I get it.
Being back here
Yes.
In the States, do you feel the real fast pace? How is it different than other countries?
Oh yeah.
The collective,
Totally. Well, it depends. Like if you go to Europe, there's still fast paced in plenty of those places. There's like but still fast paced in plenty of those places. But places that I've spent time, like Peru and Costa Rica, and yeah, there isn't this fast pace generally, especially in the more nature places that I've been. And there's more harmony with the natural rhythms of life and the earth and the cycles. And I think what comes with that often is a natural acceptance, more so at least, of how that mirrors in our own experience of our own cycles and our own weather. And also there's the fast-paced nature. It can't be ignored, because that is such a huge part of our existence here, and it affects us. And simply when we become aware of it, then we can make a new choice. And then awareness can gift us in so many ways. I like to say that awareness is a flashlight that gives us a choice, right? So if we don't realize we're like in this fast-paced world, and influenced by it, if it applies to you, some people will of course naturally have a very slow rhythm and they're just really in tune with them. That can be their gift, right? Of what they also share with others. But if we're not aware of it, then we don't even realize that we can actually slow down a bit and drop into this deeper sense of relaxation, and for that, wholeness and fullness and all the sweetness that comes with relaxation. So yeah, I mean, just to answer your question directly, which I already did, but to repeat, yeah, it's much more fast here, and of course ambitious, and if you haven't accomplished 50 things by 3 o'clock, it's like, what are you doing with your life, Yeah, and to take a week off here in the States is often like a very brave thing to do. Which is why it needs to be done for more than a week. But I find that it's, like I said, it's this awareness, right? So we become aware that we're in this, let's say, predicament, because there is a little bit of a predicament, and it's beautiful also, being human. But those of us in the States and other modern cultures often, through societies, we're in this predicament of the speed of things and technology, and the way in which ego and mind has influenced so much of the world around us. And so when we become aware of it, then we can make a choice, a new choice, to watch ourselves when we become influenced by it and make another choice in those moments. So that when we start to feel stress or believe these paradigms or notice their influence in our minds, we can just take a deep breath. And I know it's something I'm saying a lot, take a deep breath, but it can't even be said enough, because our deep breaths, those are the moments where we reorient. It's like, okay, right, okay. And just reorient into slowing down. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to say that just being here in the middle of my work day has made me feel a lot calmer. I had a very stressful day yesterday. So this is very, very good to remember to just breathe and hang out and feel good and, you know, acknowledge that some stuff was stressful, and now it's feeling a lot better. The chocolate definitely helps too. And that sometimes we feel like we have to put ourselves in a place of like, doing yoga or doing like actual like sitting down and meditating, and you just don't always find the time to fit that in your day. So being able to just stop for a second and go, oh, okay, this is what's going on. It's just a great reminder.
Thank you. Yes.
And I just want to add, your demeanor, your aura is very peaceful. Your presence makes you slow down and be more peaceful. So thank you for that.
Thank you too. And Joy, so much of what you said, like, it's so beautiful to have a practice, right? I mean, whatever feels right for us to not have a practice is also beautiful too.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I can say that my practice which is meditating in the morning, most mornings, anchors me. Yeah, it just helps me to establish my point of reference, you could say, for the day ongoing. But the point is, exactly, that all of life is the practice in the ceremony. So when we're having these moments, we don't need to be like, I gotta get to yoga, or I gotta get somewhere else other than this moment to drop back in. Because we don't. And sometimes that's really supportive, and it is what we need, and that's cool. But in general, we're already in it. We're in the yoga class right here. You know, we're in temple right here. We're in temple driving the car. So, yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. Thank you all so much for being here. It's a really gift to be in your presence and to share with you and feel you receiving, and it's amazing. And I live in Mill Valley. I'm local, so yeah. I'll have to get a little piece of paper out if anybody wants to share their email address and have some stuff going on locally sometimes. So I'll keep you informed.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and if you'd like to get a book, I'd be happy to sign it for you if that's something you'd like.
Exactly.
Is that what you're gonna say?
Yes.
Thank you everybody for coming out and supporting the wonderful author Sky, and thank you very much for supporting your local independent bookstore. Her book is available for purchase at every register, and she will be signing them, as she said, shortly. Thank you very much.